For our first lesson in anatomy, we're going to go over the muscles of the back. Now I'm going to draw a little crudely, kind of like a football coach, just as a form of communication, so you guys can memorize the muscles, okay? So if we're going to start talking about muscles, we need bones to place them on. So from the back, we'll start with the rib cage. Real lightly, I'm just putting this egg shape on my page to represent the rib cage. We have the pelvis. The pelvis is made up of separate parts. That top curve of the pelvis from the back view is kind of butterfly shaped. It's the iliac crest. Okay, so that top of that iliac crest, like butterfly wings roughly. The bottom of the pelvis, it's called the pubic arch or the ischium. Okay. We have a line of symmetry going down the body, the spine. Okay, so there's a triangular bone in the pelvis called the sacrum. Okay, the sacrum gets its name because this was the part of the sacrificial lamb that would be put on the altar. So sacred, sacrifice, sacrum. Okay, so remember that. Triangular bone. Sometimes you see little dimples on somebody's back nicknamed dimples of Venus. There are protrusions of bone on the sacrum. And sometimes where the skeleton has a protrusion, the skin goes in to meet it in a hollow place. So if you see a dimple or something like that, a hollow place, like if I go like this with my arm, this hollow place here, it's because it's going in to meet the bone. Where skin is closest to bone is really important when you draw. Okay, so these little tiny protrusions on the sacrum. So what bone is missing? Right? We have scapula in the back. So the scapula are not connected, but there is this line that kind of flows through them when skin is tight on the back. We call it the spine of the scapula. It's roughly the shape of a bull's horn, as we've learned from the gesture video, right? So like the top of like a cow's head, like a water buffalo. We have our scapula, right? They're not actually connected by that line, but there is this shine on the body there. If it's lit well, that kind of dances across the back, that connects the sacrum or the scapula visually, right? Okay, so you might see some ribs. Right. So this is the back view. The only other bone-related part that you need to be aware of is the 7th cervical vertebrae. So right here, I'll draw a little diamond, right? So you can feel it. If you feel the back of your neck, right, there's this one vertebrae that sticks out right when your back turns into that graceful curve of the neck. That's the 7th cervical vertebrae. These are all the bones. Now we're going to start talking about muscles. So in order to protect your spine, you have 2 very large tubes of deep muscle going up and down the spine. Yet again, where bone comes out, sometimes there is an indentation. Often when someone's standing upright, especially if they arch their back backwards, the small of their back shows a hollow place right here. Right? If you bend over, the spine might pop out, like you can see the vertebrae. But if you're standing up straight or if you're leaning back a little bit, that's in a hollow place. That's because there are 2 giant tubes of muscle on either side of the spine, cushioning it, protecting it. So superficially, on the top, closest to the skin, there is a very large muscle called the latissimus dorsi. Okay, so it's like this great big manta ray going from the small of your back all the way up to your armpits. This is how it does it. So that huge muscle, the latissimus dorsi, your lats, right? You do lat day at the gym or you work your lats. That's what we're talking about. Okay. These are substantial, strong, tubular muscles, right? Another large muscle, right? Just so this muscle's a little more clear, the back of the skull, right, and little ears. Okay. You have your trapezius. Your trapezius helps you lift your shoulders, helps you lift your scapula. If you were to hang on to a trapeze, you would need it. Trapeze, trapezius. Okay. So kind of similar to this shape, but flipped, like the figures in a deck of cards. You have two large tubes protecting the spine and your neck. And it actually goes around the scapula and makes this beautiful diamond-like shape. There's a lot of triangles and diamonds in the figure. This nice interlocking, almost like a suit of armor. It's my favorite. So yeah, two big tubes of muscle, bumping out your shoulders a little bit, going around the scapula and meeting in this point in the back. Now you have flanks or obliques, right? Sometimes we call it a flank if you're like buying a piece of meat. We have flanks too. Your flank is your oblique. So it sits on top of the iliac crest, right? Think of a muffin top sitting on top of the bone, right? He's a little puffy. So your muscle striations of your flank or oblique, whichever you want to call it, are going up. Very strong muscle. Kind of going in and gripping that iliac crest. Going in to meet the bone, where bone is closest to skin. Okay, there's only one more muscle that you need to learn for the back, and it's a very small one. It's called the teres major. It means little stone. And it kind of looks like a football. And sometimes you can see this little line that connects them. You see like a weird goat head? Yeah. Okay, so the teres major, I'm covered in charcoal, but I'll do it anyway, is like the back of your armpit. Okay? Weird. You might be able to see it from the front if somebody lifts up their arm. Right. Now you don't have any muscle directly on top of your shoulders, so that's something that we'll talk about more from the front view. But these are all the major muscles of the back. And your kidneys are just hanging out here because the body makes no sense.